As I heard Lou talking about how levels of government have to stop doing what's not working, and she added, "I'm tired," I heard some overtones of Rosa Parks there, who of course sat down in a white-only section of a bus and said, "I'm tired, my feet are tired, I'm not putting up with this racism," and sparked the civil rights movement that led to Martin Luther King and so much else. A lot of what we need to do is exactly that, to recognise that whatever the language and the theory and the concepts, if it's not working, let's be honest. Let's cut through. Let's not keep marching to that drumbeat because we signed up to it. So I just want to say that with the speakers you've had, you don't need a lot from me. I think the vision and leadership and honesty is already been on display this morning. I have a prepared speech that I'll email to Lou, and you can get that if you like. But I might just make some off-the-cuff remarks in terms of what I've heard this morning. Disadvantage isn't solely about economic disadvantage. Disadvantage isn't solely about economic poverty. Disadvantage, and this comes from my work domestically, and Urban Seed, as you know, are working in Norlane, an organisation I started 20 years ago up in Melbourne, and there's now going to be some terrific work done by the Baptist denomination with aged care and some social housing happening there, $40 million worth of work. I discovered in the Urban Seed days that when we would train some of our street workers to go out with only $2 on them, taking their wallets, their credit cards, saying if you're going to be a street worker, you're going to have to survive on the street with $2 for the next 24 hours. How will I sleep? What will I eat? Well, you work it out. And invariably, they'd come back after those 24 hours saying it was quite amazing. I'd spent my only $2 on a coffee or whatever it was, and I said, "Don't worry, on the street, this is when the soup van will come, you'll get to eat. Where will I sleep? Don't worry, there's a squat we know, you come with us." What they came back and said was they discovered community on the street. Now, there's a lot of harsh things on the street, and I'll never romanticise poverty and some of the things that happen when you're sleeping rough. It's terrible, and we should never accept 100,000 homeless sleeping rough. But the paradoxical insight was there was still community and spirit and care and compassion and people looking out for one another in the midst of what we would call in Australia terrible economic disadvantage. Disadvantage is also about the spiritual and the psychological, and particularly feeling you don't have a community, feeling there's no one to look out for you. What I think Grow really needs to be focusing on is this understanding that your real work is to encourage human flourishing, whatever that might mean. I say that because it's absolutely true that we have only what we might call relative poverty here in Australia, compared to absolute poverty that World Vision works with. I've just come back from Uganda. We've built a hospital, 25-bed, up near the South Sudanese border. It's the area Joseph Kony and the LRA ravaged for 20 years. So it's 20 years behind the rest of Uganda. 13 women a day die in childbirth in northern Uganda a day. That's not to mention the children die. And these are tiny bush communities with hundreds of thousands of farmers in tiny mud huts with a bit of thatch, making about $10, $15 a month from their farming. That's absolute poverty. What amazed me when on this trip, and I took a number of Australians with me, was, and this blew these Australians away, was in these communities the dance, the song, the joy. A number of them said to me, you know, we never gave to World Vision. We see your ads, we figure, the money never gets there, and it's another starving African child. They said, you never told us about the joy, the dance, the community solidarity, the impact that you're making on our lives. They all came back saying, we're going to be donating and telling our friends. What they saw in the midst of economic poverty was still human spirit flourishing. This is important to understand. Human spirit flourishing because they have a sense that they're in this together, they look after each other, they have very little, but they still have respect and dignity to, out of their little, reach out to others, to give, to say, I can do something. One of the challenges we have as human beings, and this is true in Australia where in the north of Geelong it's relative poverty to other parts of Geelong and other parts of Australia. One of the challenges we have is, as humans, we always compare up. We rarely compare down. Have you noticed this? So there's always someone doing better than us. And there's always a sense, which is a nasty feeling, that I'm failing, I'm not doing as well as someone. We rarely compare down and say, aren't I blessed? Aren't I doing well? Human flourishing requires perspective too. If I'm critical of federal politicians, Lou, it's this. For the last 8 years, both sides of politics have said to all Australians, in order to win our votes, we feel your pain. We know you're hurting. Your electricity bill might be going up. They have convinced us that we're all victims, that we're almost as badly off as Greece, that budget emergencies are so overwhelming. Can I just tell you something? We still have the third highest per capita wealth in the world. When we start to think of the challenges we've got, and there's some budget structural challenges we have got, we are still the third wealthiest people in the world. Third per capita wealth. This really hit me, actually, by a minister under Julia Gillard. He was actually doing the numbers for Rudd, so he was having a shot at Gillard. She was mooting raising income tax on people earning more than 150 grand a year. He came out, and I'll never forget this, member for Newcastle, and he said, I know a lot of people on over 150 grand a year who are really battling. That's when I knew we'd lost it as a nation. Now, if you're on over 150 grand a year, you're actually in the top 5% of wealthiest Australians. Sure, if you meet Gina Reinhardt, you might suddenly feel you're poor. Perspective tells you you didn't get any poorer, you're still in the top 5% of richest Australians, income-wise. If you're a bloke and you're 6'4", you're in the top 1% of tallest men. If you meet an NBL basketballer who's 7'2", of course you feel when you're talking to him that you shrunk. Perspective teaches you you didn't get any shorter. You're still in the top 1%. We have this ability only to compare up. And we lose perspective. We lose gratitude. We lose compassion. The most distinctive feature, I believe, of humans that distinguishes us from the animals, and J.K. Rowling said this actually in a Harvard address recently, is imagination and empathy. Human flourishing is about having the imagination to say, boy, what would it be like to be in their shoes? What would that feel like? And how can solidarity mean that I walk with them, that I am part of their story? Well, in Africa, it's very simple. The philosophy still, the ethical foundation still is, I am because we are. It's very important to say that. That as communities, trying to deal with the economic disadvantage is also got to be paralleled with the psychological, social, spiritual disadvantage. To say we will not accept demoralisation. We're doing it tough, but demoralisation, to just say we're victims and to move from hope to despair, hope that says what I'm doing matters and we can make a difference, to despair, which is resignation, nothing I do matters and it can't make any difference. That is a psychological, spiritual crossover. The most important thing is to say no. What we do matters, and it's not just you on your own. I am because we are. We are in this together. I think that's very important in a culture that compares up, in a culture that's girded by greater hyper-individualism. I was walking down the street and I saw a young woman coming toward me with a t-shirt. You know how t-shirts are like billboards these days, screaming messages. And it said, "Me. Hard to find, impossible to forget." And I thought, wow, there's a healthy sense of self-esteem, you know. I'm not sure I'd be parading it to everybody, but good on you. I kept walking and the next young woman had a t-shirt on and it said, "Kate is my religion." I was so puzzled, I stopped and said, "Is your name Kate?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Kate, are you your own religion?" She said, "Yes, I worship and adore myself." And I said, "Well, all the best with your religion, Kate. See ya." Now, at one level, you want to celebrate good self-esteem. I get it. But at another level, this is entirely wrong. You are not just worshipping yourself. You're in a community. You are not just admiring yourself. You are saying, I am because I'm serving. I'm empathising. I'm imagining what others might be going through and I'm with them. I am because we are. My son runs a restaurant called the Feast of Merit. It's a social business set up for a charity that he's running. I've had to kick him out of home for competing with World Vision. Someone has to take the tough decisions. It's doing very well. It's in Swan Street, Richmond, opposite the old Nimmies. It's called Feast of Merit. And it comes from an experience I had in Nagaland. I was up in northeast India called Nagaland. It's been fighting for its autonomy for a long time from the Indian government. And it's been often very tense. Anyway, I'm up there. It's indigenous communities, high in the mountains, so it's very cold. It's a population of about 5 or 6 million, 40 different tribes with their languages. Because it's cold, they have these massive wraparound coats, big cloaks with beautiful tapestry on them. And my Naga host, World Vision, works there. World Vision, by the way, stays 15 years in a community. But we say, you know, we will leave. You know, the money will stop. You know, this isn't to create welfare dependency. This is to stand you up. We can't live your lives for you, but to leave, to move on. That's why if you sponsor a child with World Vision, thank you, but you may get a letter from me saying, we're finishing up. If you're like me, I've written these letters to myself because I sponsor. I get emotional. I say, I like that child. Why are you doing that? Well, actually, it's a sign of success. It's actually saying there is now sustainability. This community is empowered. We are moving on. Well, this has been true in Nagaland, in lots of the places where we work. So I was looking at the World Vision work. I was admiring these coats, and I noticed that one of these colours seemed to be very important. They said, oh yes, that's the red cloak. That's for lawgivers. I said, oh wow. And then I noticed the blue one. Oh, they're the teachers. They have the blue cloaks. And so I thought, this is lovely. There's this whole clarity about your role and your responsibilities and your duties in the community. It was not until my second or third day that I saw my first gold cloak. And it knocked me out. I said, wow, gold cloak, what's their role? Oh, they said, that's a person who's thrown a feast of merit. And when I looked puzzled, they said, "Don't you have feasts of merit in Australia?" I said, "I don't know, tell me what it is." "Oh," they said, "in Naga culture, when you become rich," now this is rich by Naga standards, every single one of us in this room is richer than the richest Naga, but it means you have bags of rice and pigs in the sty. When you become rich, you can choose to throw a feast of merit. And it's a feast where the whole village is invited, but particularly the poor. And you boil your bags of rice and you slaughter your pigs, and the village feasts and dances and tells stories. And the Feast of Merit goes 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long it takes to liquidate all your assets. All your pigs slaughtered, all your rice boiled, everything eaten. And when absolutely everything you own is gone, you're given a gold cloak and you start again with nothing. I said, "I'm pretty sure we don't have this in Australia." But it reminded me of something very true about I am because we are. None of us brought anything into this world. We can't take it with us. Yes, we should provide for our kids, but we all know if you leave your kids too much, you'll only ruin them. The point about inherited wealth is it's often a block to people really standing on their own 2 feet and having a go. Here was a picture of I am because we are, not in Africa, in Nagaland. Well, I hope Grow is a picture of that. It's about economic disadvantage and young people and getting jobs, but it's more than that. It's psychological, it's spiritual, it's saying, we are standing with you. We will not accept demoralisation and resignation in the quicksand of despair. We will keep going. We'll make a difference. Thank you.